There is a word you have heard in church, in movies, in casual conversation, thousands of times. Sin. You know exactly what it means, or at least you think you do. Here is the problem. That word does not exist in the original Bible. Not once, not anywhere. Every single time you read sin in your English Bible, you are reading a translation of a Hebrew word that has nothing to do with morality on the surface. It is a word from the battlefield, a word archers used when their arrow missed the target. And once you understand what that word actually meant to the people who first heard it, the entire story of the Bible starts to look different, not less serious. Different. Let me show you. The Hebrew word is Chata, pronounced ka-ta. And if you want proof that this word started its life on a battlefield and not in a temple, you do not have to guess. The Bible tells you directly. Judges chapter 20, verse 16. The text describes 700 elite soldiers, left-handed slingers, every one of them so skilled that they could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. The Hebrew phrase used for not miss in that verse is lo yachati, built from the same root as chata. They would not chata. They would not miss the target. Read that again. The word that becomes sin in your English Bible is, in its most basic, most literal, most physical sense, a word about archery and marksmanship. It means to miss, to fall short, to fail to hit what you were aiming at. Now think about what that means when the word gets picked up and used for something bigger than arrows. When the Hebrew scriptures call something chata, they are not primarily describing a courtroom violation. They are describing a target that was missed, a purpose that was not fulfilled, an aim that fell short. This is not some fringe theory from one obscure scholar. This is basic Hebrew lexicography, confirmed across Old Testament dictionaries and confirmed by the word's own usage elsewhere in the text. But almost nobody sitting in a pew has ever heard it, because by the time Chata reaches an English Bible, it has already been flattened into a single word, sin. And sin in English carries centuries of legal, moral, courtroom baggage that the Hebrew word simply does not start with. So here is the question worth sitting with for the next 20 minutes. If sin is not primarily a crime you commit, but a target you miss, what does that change about how the Bible tells the story of humanity? If this is the kind of thing you like digging into, hit subscribe now so you do not lose track of where we are going, because this is going to get better. Let's go back further than Judges. Let's go to the first time Chata appears in the entire Bible. Genesis chapter 4. Cain and Abel. God has just rejected Cain's offering, and Cain is furious. And God says something strange to him. Genesis 4-7. If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Stop there for a second, because the Hebrew grammar in this verse is doing something remarkable. Chata, the missing the target word, is described as an animal, crouching. The verb used, ravitz, is the same word used elsewhere in the Old Testament for a predator lying in wait. Sin is not portrayed as a rule you break. It is portrayed as a beast at the door, watching, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. This is the very first appearance of the word for sin in the entire Bible, and it is not a legal term. It is a hunting image. Sin is stalking Cain the way a predator stalks prey, and the target it wants to make him miss is not some external law. It is his own capacity to rule over what is crouching at his door. Cain does not rule over it. A few verses later, his brother is dead. The target was missed in the most catastrophic way possible. Now here's where this gets even more interesting, because Hebrew does not use only one word for what we translate as sin. It uses at least three, and each one is aiming at something different. This is not the Bible being inconsistent. This is the Bible being precise in ways our English translations cannot preserve. Chata, as we have seen, means to miss the target. But there is another word, Avon, and its root meaning is to twist, to bend, to make crooked. Where Chata pictures an archer whose arrow flew wide, Avon pictures something structurally warped, like a beam of wood that was never cut straight to begin with. It is less about a single failed shot and more about a bent condition, something distorted at the core. And then there is a third word, Pesha, and this one is the sharpest of the three. Pesha means rebellion, willful revolt. It is the word used for a vassal breaking a treaty with his king, a deliberate, conscious act of defiance. This is not a missed target, and it is not a bent beam. This is someone looking at the boundary and choosing, on purpose, to cross it. 3 words: a missed shot, a crooked beam, an open rebellion. 3 different pictures of the same underlying human condition, and your English Bible collapses all 3 into one flat word: sin. You lose the archer, you lose the bent beam, you lose the rebel, and you are left with a single generic legal term that feels like a courtroom verdict instead of the rich, layered picture the original language actually paints. So which one is it? Missed target, bent beam, or open rebellion? Here is the uncomfortable answer. It is all 3, depending on the moment, depending on the heart behind the act. Scripture does not pick one metaphor and abandon the others. It reaches for whichever picture fits the failure in front of it. Sometimes you aimed for the right thing and simply fell short. Sometimes something in you has been warped for so long you cannot even remember what straight looks like. And sometimes, if we are honest, you saw the line and stepped over it anyway. But here is what ties all 3 together, and it is something most people never notice. When the Old Testament was translated into Greek, centuries before the New Testament was written, the translators needed a Greek word that could carry the weight of Chata. And the word they chose was Hamartia. Hamartia is not a courtroom word in Greek either. It comes from archery and hunting, exactly like Chata. In fact, ancient Greek playwrights used Hamartia to describe the tragic flaw in a hero, the miscalculation that sends the whole story off course. Aristotle himself used the word this way when writing about tragedy, describing a hero who is fundamentally good but misses the mark through a flaw or an error in judgment. Some scholars have pointed out this parallel between the Hebrew battlefield image and the Greek tragic stage, though the exact history of how the meanings intersected is still debated among linguists. What matters for us is this: when the writers of the New Testament reached for a word to describe sin, they inherited hamartia, the same missing the target image, now carried in Greek. And that is the exact word Paul uses in one of the most quoted verses in the entire New Testament. Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Read that again, now with everything you know. All have hamartia, all have missed the target. And Paul does not stop at sinned. He adds, fall short, a phrase built from a Greek word meaning to lack, to come up lacking, to arrive at the finish line and find you did not have enough to cross it. Paul is not writing a legal indictment here. He is describing an entire human race that aimed at something glorious, something they were made for, and came up short of it, every single one. Not because the target moved, because we did not hit it. This is why the picture matters so much. If sin is only ever framed as crime and punishment, then the only story you can tell is a courtroom story. Guilty verdict, sentence, done. But if sin is also a missed target, a bent beam, a lost aim, then the story the Bible is telling is not primarily about punishment. It is about restoration, about realignment, about something crooked being made straight again, something aimed wrong being redirected toward the target it was always meant to hit. That is not a smaller story than the courtroom. It is a bigger one. Now, before this goes further, here is something worth being careful about, because it would be easy to walk away from this thinking sin sounds softer now. An archer who missed the target sounds a lot less serious than a criminal standing in front of a judge. But think about what the target actually was. In the world these words came from, missing the mark was not a small failure. If you were a soldier and you missed, someone could die. If you were the appointed protector of your family and you missed, everyone under your care paid the price. The target was never trivial. Missing it was never harmless. And remember, Chata does not stand alone. It stands alongside Avon, the bent, warped condition, and Pesha, the deliberate, open rebellion. The Bible is not offering you a gentler word so you can feel better about failure. It is offering you a fuller word, one that makes room for the archer who tried and fell short, the person who has been bent for so long they cannot see straight, and the person who saw the line and crossed it anyway. All three are still sin. All three still miss the glory Paul is talking about. The picture is richer, not lighter. So what do you actually do with this? If sin is a missed target and not only a courtroom verdict, then the question is no longer only, how do I avoid punishment? The question becomes, how do I get realigned toward the target I was made to hit? That changes how you read your own failures. Instead of a growing list of violations stacking up against you, picture an archer who has missed, again and again, but who is not disqualified from ever picking up the bow again. Instead of a permanently bent beam thrown on the scrap pile, picture wood being straightened, slowly, patiently, by someone who has not given up on the material. Instead of a rebel facing only a verdict, picture a treaty being renewed by the king himself, the very one who was wronged, offering the terms of peace first. This is not a technicality in the Hebrew language. It is the whole shape of the gospel showing up inside a single word, centuries before the gospel was ever written down. The target was missed. The beam was bent. The rebellion was real. And the story does not end with the miss. It ends with someone else stepping in to close the distance between where the arrow landed and where it was always supposed to go. 3 words. An archer, a bent beam, a rebel at the gate. All 3 living inside a single English word that flattens them into something smaller than they were ever meant to be. Chata, Avon, Pesha. Missed, bent, defied. And every one of them, in the end, aimed at the same unfinished story. Not a story about how far you fell, but about how far the target still is, and who is willing to walk the distance with you to close the gap. If this changed the way you read that one small word, sin, share it with someone who has only ever heard it as a courtroom verdict. And if you want to keep tracing these words back to what they originally meant, subscribe. We will be here.